What's up, guys, and welcome back to the GRETT Show. We have a lot of Barcelona news today. We have a huge potential Nike deal in place that could get Barcelona out of their financial issues, or at least partly out of their financial issues. We also have some really interesting information on potential transfer rumors, certain new players that Barcelona plans on pursuing. And to be honest, a couple of these players, I'm completely not on board with these two players that they want to bring in specifically. But first, I do want to touch on this Barcelona Nike deal because this is huge for Barca. As always, don't forget to comment your thoughts about all these different topics and opinions down below in the comments. I'll do my best to respond to as many as I can. Now let's jump in and talk about Barcelona and their new Nike deal, then we'll hit on everything else. So Barcelona and Nike, it looks like they're pretty close to finalizing an insane deal that would make Barcelona the highest paid club. So I'm going to read directly from this source, and it looks like this is what Barcelona could get from this deal. So this entire deal would be about $1.4 billion. A new 10-year contract with Nike. Nike will pay Barcelona a renewal bonus that will be between 100 and 150 million euros, which could allow Barcelona to return back to the 1-to-1 rule. Barcelona will then earn a fee around 120 million euros per season with various additional bonuses thrown into the mix too. That's absolutely insane and huge for the club and could definitely help them get out of this financial issue that they're in. I also read that if this takes place, Barcelona might not actually have to sell a major name from their team this season, which could be good too, so they could keep Araujo, Raphinha, and Frenkie de Jong. It also looks like Barca could earn an extra 10 to 12 million for winning the Champions League, which I don't think that'll happen next year, but interesting nonetheless. 5 to 10 million for winning La Liga, 2 to 5 million euros for the Copa del Rey, and 1 to 2 million for winning the Super Cup. So Barcelona, they have to win a trophy next year, even though Mbappe is going to Madrid. I still think they're going to lack in the midfield by losing Toni Kroos, and I think it's going to take a little bit of time for them to adjust with Mbappe. I think Barcelona can beat them out for at least one of those domestic trophies. They have to. Next, there's three players we're going to touch on: Bernardo Silva, Joshua Kimmich, and Frenkie de Jong. We'll touch on Frenkie de Jong first, then Bernardo Silva. There's not much to say. These are just some quick things that Hansi Flick has stated about these players. So first, Frenkie de Jong. Apparently, if Barcelona has to sell someone to raise money, Hansi Flick stated that he wouldn't be opposed to selling Frenkie de Jong. Again, I agree with that, only if they can sign a top defensive midfielder, because if they don't sign a midfielder, I would still keep Frenkie de Jong because they really don't have any other defensive-minded players. Gundogan and Pedri and Fermin Lopez are more attacking. Gavi is a little more defensive than those players, but Frenkie, probably the one player besides Christensen that can still play that holding role better than the others. So that's, I guess, the talk about Frenkie de Jong at this moment. Next is Bernardo Silva. Hansi Flick stated he loves Bernardo Silva. Would love to see him play for the club, admires his attributes, his skill, and thinks it'd be a great addition to Barcelona. However, he doesn't think it's a top priority at the moment, which I 100% agree. If there wasn't any financial issues with the club, I would 100% go after Bernardo Silva. He would fit the club. He's one of the most creative players in the world. I think he's an awesome player. Would love to see him at Barcelona. But again, until they can find a true left winger, and more importantly, the CDM, I don't think that's necessary until you can find and fill those two roles. So I 100% agree with what Flick said about Bernardo Silva. Now, next is Kimmich. I'm hearing a lot of different things about Kimmich. So first, we'll touch on the contract. If Bayern Munich and Kimmich don't reach an extension this summer, it looks like Kimmich will then be sold. And we won't know until after the Euros, so it looks like we'll probably have another 4, 5, 6 weeks until we hear anything major about Kimmich from everything that I've read. Now, I'm also hearing a couple different things within Barcelona, because I've heard that Flick still wants to bring in Kimmich. He coached him in the national team for Germany. He coached him at Bayern Munich. He knows the style of player he is. Barcelona also need a midfielder, defensive-minded midfielder, which he obviously brings. So he would be on board with that. But now I just read that Laporta isn't completely on board with bringing him in. So I'm hearing different things. I don't know what's true, but what I do know is I did read that Zubamendi might be staying at Sociedad. Their manager recently came out and stated that he feels almost 100% confident that Zubamendi is going to be continuing at Sociedad, at least for next season. So I don't know who else you go for, if you can go for Onana, if you're just going to use someone from the academy. I'm not sure, but if Barcelona wants to compete in the Champions League and have a real shot to win these major trophies, I think you have to have an experienced center defensive midfielder. It's a must. So next is the frustrating part that we're going to get into, and this is the whole entire winger situation. This is all the potential transfer rumors, two new transfers that are now coming to fruition, and I am completely not on board with either of these two players, especially the one. So there are recent reports that Hansi Flick would potentially want to bring in Kingsley Coman. I mean, he's fast and he's a pretty good dribbler, but he's injury prone. He's very inconsistent, and that alone, I don't want to bring in the club. He's 27, injury prone, inconsistent, doesn't score much. Why would we bring that into the club? It makes absolutely no sense. I don't care if he coached Kingsley Coman. No. Why would we do that? That would be one of the worst signings ever. At that point, I would buy Bernardo Silva before Kingsley Coman because it looks like his market value right now is around 50 million, which is similar to Bernardo Silva. And they're saying if he has a good Euro with France, that it could shoot up even more. Absolutely no. I don't care if it's 40 million. I would never bring in Kingsley Coman. And instead of that, at that point, I would sign Griezmann and Paulo Dybala for literally 21, 22 million euros because they're both going for around 10, 11 million right now. I know they're older, and actually, I didn't even think of this before I made this video. I literally just thought of this at this moment. Now, is that realistic? I think I'm just frustrated, so I'm just speaking out of turn. But I mean, I would do that over sign Kingsley Coman in a heartbeat. Kingsley Coman is 27. Why would they do that? Now this next one is interesting. It's better than Kingsley Coman, but I'm still not on board with it. Is Luis Diaz again? His name is circling back around, and apparently there are reports saying that he might be the new top pick over Nico Williams, and that is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, I know stats don't say everything, but Premier League versus La Liga 2 is different. But Luis Diaz is 27. And Liverpool is a better team than Athletic Bilbao, where Nico Williams is at. 37 matches for Luis Diaz, 8 goals and 5 assists. Nico Williams, 31 matches, 5 goals, 11 assists. He's also 21. Okay, so first of all, he's on a team that's not as good as Barcelona or Liverpool, and he's still putting up pretty good numbers. I would take Nico Williams in a heartbeat over Kingsley Coman and Luis Diaz. I have nothing against Luis Diaz. I actually watch a lot of Liverpool. And I like watching them. There's a couple players I really enjoy watching on their team. He's one of them. He's one of their only players, one of the only constants in that club, especially when they started dropping off at the end of the season the last month or so, and they were doing terrible. He always hustles. He plays hard. His work rate is so much higher than everybody else's. He beats guys one-on-one. He's really quick. He's fast. He's just not that great of a finisher. And I know there really aren't many great finishing wingers in the world anymore. It's just, I don't know why. It's just, it is what it is. But if you're going to take in a 6-year-older Luis Diaz for probably 70, 80 million, where you could get someone 6 years younger from Spain on the Spanish national team, plays in La Liga, that's 21 and cheaper. I mean, you basically just answered all your questions. You could sign Nico Williams and have him for 10 years, and he could be one of the best players in La Liga. Luis Diaz, you sign him for 80 million. He's going to have 2 pretty good seasons at the club. I don't support that decision in the slightest. And I don't want everyone to like freak out about the Griezmann and Dybala thing that I said. I don't know why I even brought that up, but just a side note, those 2 players are so cheap, and Barcelona needs players that can score. Those players can score, and they can create a lot of opportunities, and they're way cheaper than these players that are only a few years younger. So I guess let me know your thoughts on that whole entire winger situation. And then the last 2 briefly I want to touch on. It looks like Xavi Simons probably won't be coming to Barcelona on loan. There's not more information further than that, other than it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. So if I was PSG, I would keep him. I would bring him back to the club. They lost Mbappe. He's a great player, one of the best young talents. I'd bring him back there if I was PSG. I'd love to have him if I was Barcelona, but it doesn't look like this is going to happen. So I guess that's so far all the information I can share with you on that. And then last is Raphinha. It looks like if money isn't an issue, Hansi Flick wants to keep Raphinha. He likes him. He thinks he's going to be an important part of the club next season. I agree. If you don't have to sell him, I think it's a great keep because he brings a lot of energy. He makes a lot of good runs. And honestly, he was a little unlucky this season. He hits the post so much. He easily could have had 4 or 5 more goals this season than hit the post. He's got a great left foot. He grew more and more confident as the season progressed. He had a couple unlucky injuries this season. I think if you can keep him, he's going to give you great minutes off the bench or great minutes starting because he should be starting over Lamine Yamal. Not saying all the time, but he should start over him a good amount of time because he's so young. You don't want to ruin him at such a young age. I'm not saying even 50-50, but start him, 30, 40% of the time. Bring in Lamine Yamal. And the great thing about Raphinha, he's shown he can play on the left side and be just as effective. So that's an option too. I like keeping Raphinha if the money isn't an issue. 100%. I think it's a great keep. The player I want to get rid of is Ferran Torres. I don't see how he is in any long-term plan for Barcelona. I understand the signing originally because the financial spot they were in, played at City, a huge club. He played there, had some playing time. I understood it at the time, but he's just not it. 100%. Sell him as fast as you can because the longer you wait, the less money you're going to get. I would keep Raphinha way before I'd keep Ferran Torres. So these were all the main transfer rumors, latest news, and I guess the Nike deal too about Barcelona. I want to hear your thoughts down below. If Barcelona gets this Nike deal and finances aren't an issue, what are you expecting in the transfer window this season? And also, I mostly want to hear your thoughts about the winger situation. Out of Kingsley Coman, Nico Williams, and Luis Diaz, I'm pretty sure I know the answer. I think most of you are going to say Nico Williams, which I agree. I think Coman is an awful decision. What are your thoughts on those potential signings for Barcelona? And then what is your stance on bringing in Bernardo Silva and then keeping Ferran Torres or keeping Raphinha? I want to hear your thoughts about all this down below. I appreciate you guys sticking around and watching, and I hope I can see you guys back here next time on the GRETT Show.